Hi everyone. So today we will be looking at the Finance Bill 2022, basically the income tax portion of the Finance Bill. We're just going to be covering the direct taxation portion. In the Finance Bill, there's also the indirect taxation portion, which covers customs law and GST, if I'm not wrong, but I know it covers customs law. And in this video, I'm going to be covering the major provisions that I actually felt were interesting in the Finance Bill 2022 pertaining to income tax. Of course, in the Finance Bill, and if you see what I would referred was the memorandum on the Finance Bill. So that has all the explanations and everything. So in that, if you see, there are many more amendments. There are actually a lot of amendments than are just highlighted in all the videos and the articles and everything. There are a lot of amendments, of course, but going through the entire finance, that memorandum is itself 200 pages. I think the income tax portion is around 120 pages or so, and there are a lot of amendments which I have not covered here in my notes and what I'm going to be discussing. I won't be covering all the amendments, but some amendments that and some new additions that I felt were very interesting, and obviously the trending ones that are there pertaining to the TDS provision and of course the taxation on virtual digital assets. So we'll start. So let me just check if everything is all right. Yeah, I'm yes. So this is the notes that I've covered. Yeah. So let's begin with the first amendment that was pertaining to the updated return. Updated return was uh, is pertaining to new sections that are added, which is section 139(8)(a) and section 140(b). Section 140(b) is basically the additional tax rates. So when we talk about the updated return, first let's just revise what was the existing system, which was already there's a system currently in place for filing a belated return and filing a revised return under section 139(4) and 139(5) respectively. If you see here, let me just check once again everything's cool. Yeah, where when if you see here, so here the timelines are the same for both these provisions. It's that you can file a belated return or a revised return before 3 months prior to the end of the relevant assessment year or before the completion of the assessment, whichever is earlier. So based on when you have to file your return, like if you're a company or if you're not a company but you have to get a tax audit done, then your due date is 31st October. If you have transfer pricing, it is 30th November, and for other cases it is 31st July. So you have uh, uh, so basically the this benefit is given that the end of the relevant assessment year will be say March, but your you can file a belated return 3 months prior. So it will be March, Feb, January. So within December 31st, you can file a belated or a revised return. So if you are a normal general individual taxpayer who does not have to get tax audit, and if you have to file it on July, you get August, September, October, November, full of December. You get a 5 months benefit. If you are a tax audit person, then you will get you have to file it in October, so you'll get November, December, 2 months. You get an extended period. But and if if you have transfer pricing, then you get 1 month extended period to file the return. This is to file a revised return or a belated return. After that, there was no mechanism for you to file a return till now. So now the proposal for is to bring in a provision to give you more time to file a return if you are willing to pay the additional amount of tax, which we will come to. So the proposal is that irrespective of you filing a return that is a normal return under section 139(1), 4 or 5, you can now file an updated return that is within 2 years from the end of the relevant assessment year. So if now um, for previous year, say 21-22 year ending 31st March 22, the assessment year is 22-23. So the end of the relevant assessment year is 31st March 23. Now you can file your updated return within 2 years from the end of 31st March 23. So that is 31st March 25. You now have time till 31st March 25 to file an updated return, irrespective of whether you filed a return or you did not file a return. Now, let's talk about the tax rates. Additional, of course, if you're filing a return later, you'll have to bear some additional tax. Here they're calling it additional tax. So let us see, and this comes under section 140B. So here, if you're filing after so now if you're filing after the timelines given in 130 139.4 and 139.5, that is your belated and revised returns, but within 1 year from the end of the relevant assessment year, then you have to pay additional tax at 25% of the net tax payable. So this is not like additional tax on the your total income. How much net tax payable you had after removing all your after claiming your TDS, TCS, etc., MAT credit, all that. After all that, the balance how much net tax payable you have, uska 25% plus cess, you take it, and that will be how much bunch you'll be paying in your updated return. Similarly, if you are filing the updated return after 1 year from the end of the relevant assessment year, but uh, within 2 years, so uh, relevant assessment year is over after 1 year, but within 2 years, then you have to pay an additional tax of 50%. So if you're doing it before 1 year, but after your 139.4 FICA time limits, it's 25%, but after 1 year, within 2 years, it's 50%. That's it. Now, of course, they said that 139.8A is not allowed. That is, you can't file an updated return if in that pertaining to that relevant assessment year ka previous year, uh, if a search is conducted, survey is conducted, see any seizure is done, if already you filed 139.8A ka updated return, you can't file another updated return. So you can't do that. If it's a loss return, you can't. If you're filing a return to decrease your tax burden or to increase the any refund due, you can't file. Or if in that relevant assessment year any assessment, reassessment, recomputation, or revision is conducted, or a revision is pending, or it has been completed, assessment has been completed in the relevant assessment year, then you can't file an updated return. So this is basically the provisions for updated return. It's basically giving the taxpayer some more time, a mechanism for some more time to file this, to file their updated return without any assessment being done, and they have to pay penalty on assessment and everything. So and you're given them time more than the belated return and revised return timelines. So that is updated return. Let's go to the next one. Next next one is cess and surcharge on income tax are disallowed. Yeah, so uh, this is actually based on certain judgments that were made, like certain contradictory judgments in certain courts, where actually based on the act, uh, you can't uh, like there was like a technical wording in the act where SSCs used to take advantage of, and they used to take cess on income tax as a allowance on PGBP. So it used to go to litigation, and then judgments were there. Some courts gave the judgment that you can take cess as a allowance. some courts said that you cannot take cess as an allowance. But finally, now there is an amendment in the act which says that you can't take cess and surcharge on income tax as an allowance, because cess is just an extension of your income tax. Cess on other laws, that you can take as an allowance, but cess on income tax law you can't take as an allowance, because income tax is a disallowed expenditure. You can't take. So cess is just an extension of that, so you can't take. And similarly, surcharge also is the same thing. Now this is a retrospective amendment. So, and it is with effect from 1st April 2005, and that is assessment year 2005-6. So being it a retrospective amendment, assessees that have taken in the previous year's cess as allowance, it can be open to assessment now, and those cases can be opened by the assessing officers. So that's what I gather from this retrospective amendment. That's why they made it a retrospective amendment. So let's go to the next one. Everything is fine, right? Okay, let's go to the next one. Amendment to section 43B. Now 43B is our payment or allowances on actual basis, right? So we can only take the deductions or the allowances in our PGBP if the payments are made on actual basis. So for certain payments. Now this amendment is specifically talking about interest liability. Now, and in interest liability, interest on a loan from a financial institution, if it is converted into a straight debt or a debenture, if the interest portion is converted into a liability now, what assessees, some assessees used to do, this is all I'm just quoting, paraphrasing what was given in that memorandum to the finance bill. The interest liability, when it was converted to a debenture, that is a debt portion, it was converted and it was treated in a way that it is now discharged as a payment, and that amount that is converted used to take as a allowance, and it used to reduce the income, of course. So this used to be done, this used to be a practice that used to be done, but now with this amendment, the law says that it is doing that practice is against the intent of this law. So they are specifically saying that when interest liability is converted into a debenture, the interest converted is not allowed and only allowed on actual payment. So basically this is done to defer the, if you are not able to pay the interest portion, take it as a loan, convert it into a loan and defer, and you are paying that loan later on in later installments. So when you're paying that installments, only then you can take it as uh, a deduction on the actual payment. So this is also done, and this is this is uh, applicable with effect from 20 assessment year 23-24. So this one. So that's fine. That is this amendment. Next, let's go to benefit given extension date for incorporation of startups to 31st March 2023. So before it was 31st March 2022. Basically, for startups, they get 100% deduction of their PGBP amount. PGBP income, they get 100% deduction in any 3 consecutive years out of 10 years. So in a span of 10 years, they can choose any 3 consecutive years where they get a 100% deduction of PGBP amount, subject to fulfilling conditions. That is, the startup's turnover has to be up to 1 crore. It has to have an I think IMBC certificate. I think that is interministerial board for something. Okay, but I'm not getting the full form now, but it is IMBC certificate which is given to eligible uh, startups, and you have to incorporate it within 31st March 2023. Now it used to be 2022, they've just extended it to 2023. So that is done. Then next is alternate minimum tax rate is amended to 15% from 18.5% to cooperative societies. So this is just bringing the tax rate for AMT in parity with the tax rate for MAT for cooperative societies. For MAT, the tax rate in the last in the not the Finance Act, in that taxation uh, amendment law, which was there last year. In the middle of the year, they had passed that law. So in that, they had MAT was reduced to a 15%. So now AMT for cooperative societies is reduced to 15% as well. So that is this provision. Let's go to the next one. Next one is COVID-19 medical treatment reimbursed by employer and other person. So this is basically if any medical treatment was paid by the employer or reimbursed by the employer to the employee, uh, then uh, so if the employee had to incur any COVID-19 related medical expenditure and the employer has paid for that amount or reimbursed that amount to the employee, then this will not be considered as a perquisite. Generally, these things will be considered as a perquisite, but here it will not be considered as a perquisite. It's an amendment. They've amended section 17, subsection 2. And if it is reimbursed by any other person who's not an employee year, any other person, generally section 56 to 10 would be attracted, gift provisions would be attracted, aggregate amount greater than 50,000 rupees in the year would be uh, chargeable under income from other sources as a gift. But here they've amended 56 to 10 where this is this nature of a reimbursement of an amount uh, given to another person will not be considered as a gift. So it won't be a taxable basically. It's giving the benefit for COVID-19 related medical treatment. And one more, if any person was deceased due to COVID-19, then the compensation received by the family of that person from the employer. For employer, there's no limit. For the employer and from any other person, up to rupees 10 lakh will not be taxable. So if an employer gives any compensation, any amount will not be the income of that family. And if you're getting from any other person who's not the employer, up to 10 lakh will not be taxable. After 10 lakh, it would be, right? And that would come under your again 56 to 10 provisions after 10 lakh. And this amount has to be received within 1 year of the decease of that person. If it after 1 year, then this won't be applicable. You won't get this benefit within 1 year. Then you'll get this benefit. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so the next one is the TDS related amendment, or not really an amendment. It's a new provision that was brought in. So the new addition, section 194R. So this is TDS on benefit or perquisite of a business or a profession. As far as I'm concerned, and what I have, I've seen like I've seen one video where certain tax professionals are discussing this section, and looks like a pretty controversial section. But let's just see what it is. So now this is basically TDS on benefit or perquisite of a business or profession. Limit is 25,000. So that means no TDS if up to 25,000 aggregate perks in the current financial year, and no TDS if in the prior year turnover is up to 1 crore for a business and turnover up to 50 lakh for a business. So basically, if one business is giving any benefit in the form of a perquisite or uh, something related to that to another business, ideally that other business has to take this as income in their ITR. But department has been finding out that businesses are not doing that. They are not taking these as benefits or purpose, because these are like, there's no value. I mean, there is no like tangible value that they are deriving from this. It's not like a money or cash or something that's been paid. Maybe something in kind or some kind of benefit that they have given them. So what the department is saying, that now the person who's giving the benefit only has to deduct tax. So that is the only thing. So now here I have just noticed that I haven't put the rate of the tax, and I don't think, yeah, I haven't put the rate, so no issues. We can of course go to the uh, memorandum, because I feel the memorandum is very good. It gives the explanation as well. We go to section 194. So here it says that according to, and yes, case of a benefit, cash is not sufficient, no tax to be deducted, benefit should not apply. Yeah. So I think in the first paragraph it will be written according, insert a new 134 to provide responsible for providing benefit account at the rate of 10%. So yeah, I missed that. So this is at the rate of 10%. So this TDS is at the rate of 10%. Limit is 25,000. So if your aggregate perks to a certain person is up to 25,000 in that financial year, then you don't have to deduct any TDS. If it is about 25,000, then you have to deduct TDS at 10%. Now, if you are a deductor, if you are the person who's giving the benefit, and your turnover in that in the year prior to the year that you're giving the benefit is up to 1 crore. If you're a business and it's 50 lakh, if you're a profession, then you don't have to deduct TDS. So if you're a smaller business, basically you don't have to deduct TDS. So that is this provision. Perquisite ka provision is already there for salaries. Under the head of salaries, employer giving any perks to the employee has to deduct TDS. Section 192, anyway, they have to deduct TDS, the whole amount. But this is now widening the ambit. If you look at the section 17, perks are is very specified. They have assigned value to a lot of kind of perquisites, but here it's very broad. So I think the challenge will come in finding the value of these perquisites, because businesses won't know. Like, I don't think generally, if I can just assume that suppose to entertain a client or to gain further business with a client, you say pay for the dinner or something like that, can that be taken as a perquisite? Can that be taken as a benefit, like a client meeting, entertainment expenses for client meetings? Is that a benefit or a perquisite? How do you value that? So I think those will be the challenges that will be there here. Let's go further. Next is the final thing which I am just going to cover. These were the main things that I wanted to cover. Other things are many other, I think, interesting things are there, but these are the main things. Last thing is, of course, virtual digital asset taxation. I had made a video earlier for taxation of cryptocurrency. Now that video will completely be irrelevant because of this provision, section 115 BBH and section 194S, which is the TDS provision, of course. And this covers basically your taxation of cryptocurrency and taxation of NFTs. Right now, because NFTs are popular, it covers NFTs, and the act specifically includes NFT. They have an explanation for what are NFTs in the definition itself, and it says that virtual digital asset includes non-fungible tokens. But I guess in the future, as and when smart contracts, create more instruments, it will be included in virtual digital assets. But right now, the big craze is NFTs and, of course, cryptocurrency. So this section covers it. These two sections covers the taxation portion. So let's look at it. Any income from a transfer of a virtual digital asset will be taxable at flat 30%. Only your cost of acquisition will be deductible. Of course, it has to be, because only then your profit will be taxable at 30%, but nothing else is deductible. Like, you can't set off with any other head of income. If you have an aggregate loss, you cannot set off with any other type of income. any loss of any other head cannot be, or other type of income cannot be set off against profits here. It's flat 30% on the profits. Now, the thing here where I feel a doubt can come, or it's pretty logical and it's clarified. I feel because I saw somewhere that it was clarified, but let's just see when I bring it out. Is that suppose I have purchased and I have sold an NFT and I've made a profit. Now, uh, I say an NFT is a virtual digital asset. A certain NFT I kept with me and I sold it also. Now, on a different account, say on it doesn't suppose this I did it in uh, uh, say at Wazirex, but in uh, Unocoin, like a totally different broker or a totally different exchange. I Oh no, NFTs, it's done on some other platform, and on say Unocoin, I have bought and sold say Ethereum or Bitcoin. Now I have made a loss when I sold the Bitcoin, but I made a profit when I sold the NFTs. Now can I club these two and then take it as an aggregate profit when I take it as a base for charging my tax rate? Can all the so basically my point is that all virtual digital assets is it like profit that is taken off all virtual digital assets, or is it taken separately? I feel it will be all together, because people who have lot of transactions during the year, a direct flat 30% will take a big hit, because especially people who trade in large amounts, and there are people who trade in large amounts who move the market, they make huge profits and huge losses. So I guess they would have to set it off and pay a net amount. So yeah, that is there. And when we look at the TDS provisions for that, now TDS is deductible at 1%. So now that is TDS is obviously when you're purchasing the virtual digital asset. Now when you're purchasing the virtual digital asset, you'll be deducting at 1%. Now here again concept of specified person will come. So now what is a specified person? Specified person is basically an individual or an HUF whose uh, uh, whose aggregate, you're an individual HUF, and your turnover, if you're a business, is up to 1 crore, and if you're a profession, it's up to 50 lakhs. That is a person who is a specified person, or a person who doesn't have PGBP income is also a specified person. And so now, if you're a specified person and your aggregate consideration to a resident, when you're buying a virtual digital asset, the consideration that you're paying to a resident person is lesser than 50,000, then you don't have to deduct TDS. So basically, if you're a smaller guy, not having big business and all, and paying, uh, you're buying an NFT or a virtual digital asset for lesser than 50,000 rupees you're paying, then you have no TDS to be deducted. If you're not a specified person, that means if you're having business greater than 1 crore 1 crore or 50 lakhs, then your if your aggregate consideration is lesser than 10,000, then only no TDS. So if you're a bigger guy, then the limit is 10,000. If you're a smaller guy, limit is 50,000. So if you're a bigger guy and if you pay less than 10,000, so if you're a bigger guy and if you pay 20,000, then you have to deduct TDS. But if you're a small guy and you pay 20,000, you don't have to deduct TDS. So that is basically the distinction. Now, for a specified person also, section 203A and 206AB will not be applicable. 203A is your TAN provision. So with your PAN itself, you don't have to apply for a TAN if you're a small person, if you're a specified person. Then with a PAN itself, a mechanism will be there for you to deduct TDS. So you don't have to go through applying for TAN. 206AB is specific provision related to double TDS rate of 5%, whichever is higher. Specific provisions which will not be applicable to a specified person. So that's it. That's it for virtual digital assets taxation, and that's it for the finance bill also. Income tax portion, only the key points which I found interesting. Obviously, there are other points. Uh, the memorandum is always there, and the finance bill is also always there. And yeah, obviously, in this, I'm not covering the remaining budget portion of the budget and the schemes and everything. So, this is only the finance bill. So, this PDF will be there in the link in the description. So, that's it from me.